One of the other big stories this week, the search for justice in the Mansion murders. The trial of Darren Witt set to get underway tomorrow. Now, he is the man charged in the murders of businessman Savas Savopoulos, his wife Amy, their son Philip, and family housekeeper Vera Figueroa. They were held hostage in their D.C. mansion before being killed, and the home set ablaze. Now, Witt faces 20 counts, including murder, arson, and extortion. He's the only person charged in the brutal killings, despite investigators initially saying it would have taken more than one person to pull off such a crime. So joining us now to try to break it down, A. Scott Bolden, an attorney and managing partner at the Washington office of Reed Smith. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
This is an interesting case, and it's a fascinating case, not just because of the so-called Mansion murders element of it, but for a long time there was no idea who might have done this. Then an arrest is made, and then it just really seemed like from the stories that we had heard about this and the evidence that was released, that maybe this one wasn't ready to go to trial. What do you think?
You know, what's interesting about this case is that it is so unusual and odd for this posh neighborhood where 4 people are killed and you have this conspiracy. What the question begged is why? What was the motive? And did they get the right person? And if they did get the right person, how come nobody else has been arrested and stuff?
Yeah, there's so many questions with it. Let me ask you this from an attorney perspective, because you've worked both sides of the thing. Would you rather be a prosecutor in this case or representing on the defense?
Well, it's always more fun being on the defense. But
in this particular case, based on what we know?
Well, the tough ones as a prosecutor, you want to try those too because you believe that justice will be done. It's not just for a conviction rate. I will say this. Every prosecutor wants a perfect case, right? But we don't do the investigating early on. It's the police or the FBI. And so they bring us what they have. In this case, based on published reports, this crime scene in this highly unusual case that you knew as soon as you got to this posh neighborhood, this was something different. And this was going to be a high-profile matter. And what we're hearing is that screwdrivers weren't recovered, that the police and the firemen used things personally in the crime scene. That's a problem in and of itself because it will be used against the prosecution as a sloppy investigation, and perhaps they could have gotten the other possible co-defendants, or better yet, that they got the wrong defendant in this case because their investigation was not up to par.
Obviously, in this case, the suspect has not cooperated with police. He's not admitted to anything. So how much leeway does the prosecution have in establishing a motive in this case?
Well, they certainly will have a lot of leeway because the jury will be begging themselves and begging the prosecution, what was the motive? Much like your first question, my response was, there's a lot more going on here. It'll be interesting to see what the prosecution has to present to the jury because this is a circumstantial case. Do they have another witness that can not only put the defendant at the scene, but whereby maybe the defendant has admitted something or that they are an unindicted co-conspirator that they will put on the stand?
Could something like that surface in the course of this trial? Something, the bomb, so to speak, that we have not yet heard about to this point?
Well, I think the prosecution needs a bombshell in order to obtain this conviction. It may not be disclosed beforehand, at least not publicly, but the court as well as the defense would know about the list of witnesses and the list of evidence. And if it's powerful for the prosecution, I'm not sure on the defense side I'd want that to be made public because there are no Perry Mason moments in criminal trials or civil trials anymore. Both sides know everything that they're going to expect.
All right, so let's say you're representing the defense in this case. We have DNA, a sample from a slice of pizza crust inside. That's pretty much it. What do you do as a defense attorney?
I attack the DNA evidence. I attack the contamination of the crime scene, and I raise reasonable doubt, an objective reason as to why the crime scene and the DNA may be unreliable. You'll hear from DNA witnesses. I'll have a DNA witness that will challenge the validity of the government's DNA examination and conclusions, and I would argue contamination not only stopped the government from finding the other bad actors, but that the other bad actors are the ones that killed this family, not my client.
As we started with a lot of questions in this, one of them, when Darren Witt was arrested, there were other people around, there were trucks, there was a lot of involvement, yet there were no other arrests. Can that be questioned? Can we question police work in this case?
Well, unless there's evidence of that, the other persons that were with him, I can guarantee the police tried to link them and arrest them and make them part of what we would call a co-conspiracy. The most important part about the subsequent stop is that the monies were recovered. And were these marked dollars or not, if they weren't, you don't ride around in a 2-person caravan with $40,000 or $50,000. And so look for some witnesses in connection to the defendant, but the money and what all took place post murders, the post-Mansion murders, as opposed to what took place in the house. Most importantly is what took place in that house, and who are the witnesses, if any, or what is actual evidence that just links in.
And finally, with all the attention, can you seat an impartial jury in this case?
You can. The standard of the litmus test is, can you sit as a fair and impartial juror despite what you've heard about the case, perhaps even despite what you know about the case? Can you sit as a fair and impartial juror? And most people would say that they can. Now, you have peremptory challenges, you have challenges for cause, because you got to weed them out. But essentially, the government and the defense and the judge are pretty much stuck with the answers of those jurors. And if they don't tell the truth, well, that's problematic, but you're still stuck with whoever you can choose from.
Going to be fascinating to watch in the next week or two.
Keep reporting on this. This is going to be a good one.
We absolutely will. We'll have it for you right here on Fox 5 every step of the way.